This is Bad Movies We Love, part of the Shice Podcast Network.
If you're listening to this, you are the resistance.
Hello, Bad Movie Lovers, and welcome to a new episode of Bad Movies We Love. I am your host, Nick Scheist.
The master of this stupid stuff!
There is no real theme for July like we occasionally have on the show, but things are still heating up this month as I welcome some first-time guests, plus a crossover collaboration with some new friends. So July is going to be a little all over the place tonally, but that is how the show started, so we're still going to have plenty of fun. And speaking of fun, you can sign up for the Resistance members only for just $5 a month at badmovieswelove.captivate.fm/support, and you'll have even more fun with Bad Movie Futures, Rom-Comathon, and Baimon Sci-Fi-Con, which I just released a new episode. The 15-minute trailer is out. We were talking about Contact. It's a fantastic episode. I think that episode alone is worth the $5, to be honest. And if you want to help the show in other ways, the best ways to do that are to subscribe to the show on your podcast platform, to tell somebody about it, and by leaving a review for the show wherever you listen to it. It's quick, it's easy, it's low commitment, and honestly, you could do it right now. Just hit pause on the show, take 30 seconds to leave a review, come back to the show, and you'll hear me saying, thanks for leaving a review. I trust in what I'm doing here at the show. Obviously, if you're listening to this, you trust in what I'm doing at the show, but that doesn't mean I don't want to hear from you. So, if you want to share your thoughts with me, you can reach out to me via the phone line at 1-805-285-3885, or you can email me at badmovieswelove@theshice.com. And if you feel like you want to speak your mind but remain anonymous, you can do that by taking the listener survey, which is just a click away in the show notes. All right, that's enough of that, because for this episode, I was joined by my friend and my associate producer over at Cunk'd, a very unofficial podcast, to talk about a film with a reputation of being one of the most bloated, decadent, debaucherous movies ever made. That's right, we are talking about Caligula. At the time that this was made, this was the most expensive independent film ever.
You feel like you've time traveled into a different world.
The movie is funnier than it maybe was given credit for.
I mean, it's definitely an interesting mix of genitals and art.
I'm just here for a period drama and then go. I wasn't expecting the fellatio.
Is that cunnilingus?
MI6 is there. Caligula has arrived.
Let's make this a date night movie.
I want a giant penis and vagina cake.
They actually have penis in the ground. Penis walkways.
That's right, little sister. I thought this one through.
What are you into?
When I watched this movie, I was thinking a lot about ancient Rome.
Almighty Caesar says, to balance the state budget, we shall confiscate the entire estates of all those who have failed. They have failed me.
Antonius Annis.
They have failed Rome.
Velixius.
Arrest them.
Jake, welcome to the show.
Hi. Thank you so much for having me.
No problem. This is one that we sort of kicked around a little bit, but, you know, this is your first time on the show. We sort of have like mutual acquaintances, which sort of got us here. But do you want to introduce yourself before we get started?
I would love to. I'm just Jake Crawford. I'm a friend of a friend, I guess I would say, and a fellow cinemaphile. And I host a podcast myself, and I've been following you for a long time, and I admire everything you do.
Well, thank you. That's so nice of you to say. I'll give you a chance again at the end to plug the show. What is your podcast?
It's called Cinematically You, and I kind of bring people to just talk about certain films and how they make you feel and memories of certain films. And
Oh, that sounds lovely. I'm going to have to check that out. I didn't know that until right now. So it's a good thing I asked. But for the purposes of what we're doing today, I'm going to switch this up for the first time. I'm going to allow you to introduce what movie we're talking about.
So we are going to be discussing Caligula, the ultimate cut.
That's
which
right.
is just released last year, and it's with Malcolm McDowell and a fabulous Dame Helen Mirren in one of her earliest roles, and it just has the biggest cast.
It is a massive, massive cast of a lot of people who probably, if I really dug into all of their filmographies, I would be more familiar with than I am at a glance, because I think there's like 2,500 actors on this project in total. So it's a little hard to contextualize that at a distance. But that is right. The original was from 1976, and it took almost 50 years to get the ultimate cut, which was restored from original footage and original audio and re-edited and punched up a little bit to give us the movie that I ended up watching. And part of me wants to watch the original now and see how different they are after reading a little bit more about the differences. But that one's still 2 hours and 36 minutes. So I'm not sure that I want to do that today. It's not available as easily as the new one is either. So that's an extra hurdle. But when we first started our discussions on what you wanted to do for the show, this was kind of a no-brainer. You went straight to this one. So I'm curious, why is that the case? Was this always something that you viewed as a bad movie that you had an affection for, or is this because of the movie's reputation in general?
I studied film in college. I didn't get to finish it because we moved, but my acting teacher brought up Caligula as just the ultimate example of what could have been a good movie, but then it went completely off the rails. And then when I got to see this, Sally did not get to go and see it in theaters. It did not come anywhere close to where I live. But I got to watch this, and it is just, I think it's a piece of art. And I always thought the original was a piece of art. I first watched the original when I was about 14. And I was stunned by just how bad filmmaking could be, but there's just a glimmer of goodness in it. There was parts where I thought fantastic acting, costumes, gorgeous, and then it just goes down the pot.
I mean, it's certainly not without its issues, but in my first experience with it, it wasn't something for me where I watched it and felt like, oh, this is a bad movie. I see the care that went into the design, the costumes. Like you said, there's some really good performances in this film from Peter O'Toole and Malcolm McDowell. I feel like a lot of the elements of the film are strong and stuff that I wouldn't say that should be considered objectively bad, but I can definitely see why someone wouldn't like this movie. You kind of prefaced it and warned me that, it's a lot. Apologize for what I'm going to see. And I was like, I'm not worried about that. And for the most part, like, I think maybe in my head, I made it out to be much more debaucherous than it actually is, which I don't know if that's for better or for worse, but I didn't feel like overwhelmed by the graphic sexuality of it. And that could be because the movie's 3 hours long. So a lot of the movie is not that as well. And I feel like it's very much at home with a lot of like Shakespearean stories in sort of the mechanics of the prince that becomes king and goes mad, and there's plots and there's schemes to take over the throne. And I'm like, hey, look, Game of Thrones was a little heavy handed with the incest themselves. So this isn't something that is like super unfamiliar in recent years, at least. So I wasn't sort of floored by that aspect of it. But when I'm just kind of observing, there is a ton of attention that is paid to that as almost like a background painting, and that a lot of those extras that we talked about with the actors, a lot of those people are there like explicitly for the purpose of participating in the gigantic orgies that are happening in the background. So there is definitely the, I think, intent to be provocative for the sake of being provocative, to really sort of grind those gears of the average movie going public. And this is a movie that ended up being X-rated, so it struggled to actually get seen for a long time. But when it was in theaters, it did pretty well in its initial release, I think, because of the word of mouth of like the kind of thing that they're making. And back in the 70s, there was still more sort of, there was a little bit more crossover still at the time between stuff that was, let's just say, pornographic and stuff that was cinematic. The line was not as clearly delineated as it became as soon as like home video and stuff like that, where like porn became porn and then cinema became cinema, and they kind of like left each other alone. This might even be like the last movie that really went big on that idea.
I agree. I think it is one of the last remaining kind of dredges of big costume epics. It reminds me of a lot of, like, today I rewatched it at 5 a.m. in the morning, and I was and I thought of Cleopatra with Elizabeth Taylor and how much it kind of reminded me of that. It also had a very troubled production as well, and just the big costume epics, the level of care that goes into the set, everything that would, if Caligula would have been made nowadays, it would have been all green screen. Unfortunately, I think there would be no big set piece or handmade boat for just a single scene. And there definitely would not be that level of sex in a film nowadays. We're a bit prudish, even though Poor Things came out last year or a couple of years ago, and it was considered shocking with how much was in it. But that's tame compared to what was put forth in Caligula. And I think it was the last remaining. I mean, I think that, unfortunately and fortunately, I guess, depending on how you view it, it kind of died out.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, we've gotten sort of more prudish in the last few decades as a society where, you know, right now, like, I don't know, once a week, once a month, you hop online for a little bit, somebody's complaining about too much sex in cinema when there's like none. It's like they kissed and then they took their shirts off and then there's not even a sex scene. And like, that's too much for people. So to see something like this, where the first scene we meet Caligula, he's having incestual sexual relations with his sister, is like, okay, well, he didn't even want to, like, you know, slow roll us into that one. We start there. But I think it's a good starting point for the character that they are describing to us, right? This isn't a person of necessarily high moral fiber from the beginning. And that was kind of one of the issues that Gore Vidal had with trying to like maybe get his name taken off of the project. Was his initial script sort of painted the character a certain way, and then the producer wanted much more debauchery. And so it's like we're starting at a different place. And so there's a lot of creative control issues that led to all the production problems, that led to the delays, that led to the reputation. There was issues with people not getting paid, you know, and the movie was fairly expensive for what it was. Like you mentioned with that boat, it was the largest single prop ever built at the time. So it's like a full size ship, and it's just for a scene. Not even a scene where they're even on the water, I don't think. It's just like a party. So I really love set design. I love practical application of techniques. So as someone who really, really loves that aspect of sort of traditional filmmaking, I feel like this movie is very rich in those areas. And so maybe my focus was more drawn to how the movie was made and how the scenes were set, rather than the lady pleasuring herself with like the cunnilingus cycle. Although I see that and I'm like, hey, you know what? Like, okay, that's fine. No problem there. So the movie does have that stuff, but I feel like reducing the movie to those things maybe doesn't do it justice in terms of like its actual overall filmmaking skill and craftsmanship.
I feel that the critics at the time just immediately zoned in on how overly, because the original is, it's you're speechless by the end of it, because it is that like there's nothing that they hold back, and it's to the detriment of the story at times, because it's just random scenes of orgies. But I think they completely blitzed over kind of just how beautiful the film is as a whole. When it is focused on the story, it is gorgeous. There's so much production design that is just outstanding. I mean, I think of Tiberius's bath right at the beginning, where people are diving into the water, which they based on real historical stuff. And it's, as a history buff, I'm kind of like, thank you. But I also just think the costumes are just phenomenal. And unfortunately, like Robert Ebert, he just completely skipped over it. He walked out actually and gave it 0 stars. And he didn't even focus on, there is such good acting, there's such good production design. If this had been handled a certain way, I think it could have been a minor classic. And I think it is sort of a minor classic if you're into that sort of film where it's very artsy.
Yeah, and I think in terms of film history, the film is important for what it did and the reputation and the processes of getting a movie like this to a wide audience. I think all that stuff is important in terms of film history. But in terms of just pure ratings, I'm looking at the original scores for the original version of the film. And so for The Tale of the Tape, it has an IMDb of 5.3, a Letterboxd of 2.8, a Rotten Tomatoes critic score of 18, and an audience score of 38. So that gives us a Bad Movies We Love total score of 41.25 out of 100. And going into this movie, or at least this version of this movie, you know, you and I had talked and I said, well, I think with the new one being slightly better reviewed, it sort of puts it into more of like borderline territory, but it's still something that's in the low 60s. And if we were to like combine the scores for everything, we could probably still get it under 60 and it'd be fine for the show. But I want to ask you, having seen the original and having seen the ultimate cut, what are the primary differences that you would attribute the change in perception to? Do you think it's more about time, or is it specifically about how the film handles its content and its quality?
I think, I just think what, I do think that time has everything to do with it. I think the original is just left to languish and all those. There were 1,500 cuts of this film. Some have aged horrifically in terms of the aging of the grade. And then to have that wonderful, I can't really remember his name at the moment because ADHD brain, but he stripped it apart and didn't use a single frame of the original. And I think there's something special about the new version where he understood it a bit better than the original director. The original director was, he was an interesting man, and I kind of think that the newer version, it's not great, but he understands what the good parts of the film were, and that was Caligula. His story is interesting. It's fascinating. I enjoy what he was able to kind of cobble together, and he had to work a lot to cobble this back from what it had been reduced to.
And do you know how long the actual like restoration process took?
I think I do have the production book. I think it said that it took a very long time. Like, he was fighting with Tinto Brass quite a bit because he's still around, and he was quite angry that they were releasing a new version without asking him, even though he took his name off the project. So
Wow.
what and apparently he still isn't pleased with it. He's disavowed it.
I mean, I think at this point, just own it, right? It's the most seen film of Tinto's career. So, like, just lean into it. At this point, like, whatever, who cares? It's 50 years old. You don't have to disavow it at this point. But it is an interesting story, I think. Not just the Caligula story, which I find to be interesting too, but the story of trying to make this film. So I'm going to take a moment and set the table for the audience because there is quite a lengthy production story attached to this. Penthouse founder Bob Guccione set out to produce an explicit, high-end historical epic centered on the rise and fall of the Roman Emperor Caligula. And though Penthouse had previously funded films like Chinatown and The Longest Yard, Caligula marked the magazine's first solo production. So development began under Franco Rossellini with an early screenplay drafted by Lena Wertmuller. Dissatisfied, though, Guccione turned to acclaimed author Gore Vidal, paying him $200,000 to write a new script, and Vidal's version emphasized homosexual themes, which Guccione pushed to soften to appease broader audiences. Lavish sets and costumes were designed by Danilo Donati, and Guccione cast respected mainstream actors to lend credibility to the project. He offered the director's chair to John Huston and Lena Wertmuller, both declined, obviously. Guccione ultimately hired Tinto Brass, impressed by his earlier film Salon Kitty, which is kind of a similar era-specific sexual film. Brass found Vidal's script unworkable, and with Guccione's blessing, he heavily rewrote it to heighten the film's sexual spectacle. Obviously, this doesn't go over well. Tensions erupted after Vidal called the directors parasites in an interview, leading Brass to have him removed from the set. Then Vidal sued over creative changes and distanced himself from the final film, prompting Guccione to reframe the credits. Caligula was now simply adapted from a screenplay by Gore Vidal with no screenwriting credit listed. He still got paid, but Guccione later described the film as a collective effort shaped by many hands, though clashes behind the scenes made clear there was no singular vision. Filming officially wrapped on December 24th, Christmas Eve of 1976. and Brass shot an enormous amount of footage, enough, that Guccione joked, to make the original Ben-Hur about 50 times over. Brass began editing the film, but after completing a rough cut of only the first hour, he was removed from the project. His version was dismantled, and the film's final edit, handled anonymously by multiple editors, radically altered the tone, pacing, and even the music Brass had intended. In a controversial move, weeks after filming ended, Guccione and co-producer Giancarlo Louis secretly returned to Rome with a skeleton crew and several penthouse models. They filmed unsimulated hardcore sex scenes at night, inserting them into the movie without Brass's involvement. These scenes featured penthouse pets Annika de Lorenzo and Lori Wagner, both of whom had minor roles in the original footage. As a result, Brass then disowned the film, and his credit was reduced to principal photography by Tinto Brass. Because of other production issues of on-set noise, most English-speaking actors had to re-record their dialogue. Italian supporting actors were dubbed over. Peter O'Toole, reluctant to even participate, was tracked down in Canada and compelled to return and complete his audio work. Afterward, he publicly expressed his disdain for the film and doubted it would ever see release. Post-production dragged on for so long that co-producer Franco Rossellini repurposed the lavish Caligula sets and costumes without designer Danilo Donati's permission. They used that for a raunchy sex comedy, Messalina, released in Italy in 1977. In some markets, it was even falsely marketed as a Caligula sequel, featuring Annika de Lorenzo and Lori Wagner reprising their roles. Despite all of this, Caligula goes on to be number one at the box office when it finally releases, making $20 million in its opening weekend. Gets pulled after that opening week, but still ends up being the highest grossing adult feature ever made. So quite a story just to get this movie off the ground, on film, and then into a theater, only to have it removed a week later. Quite a lot going on there.
Yeah, there's so much just going on, and then just the way it was just kind of left to just languish, become sold as different versions. There was an alternative cut in 2008 that it was supposed to be the Imperial edition, and they just added in scenes of torture everywhere in places it didn't make sense. and
we'll balance out the egregious sex by adding more torture.
Because who's going to pay attention at that point? And I guess it got so bad that Malcolm just I regret starring in this. I can't believe I appeared in this. And Helen Mirren said that she does not regret a single day spent on that set. She famously described the film as an irresistible mix of art and genitals.
Yeah, she's not entirely wrong there.
She's entirely right. And she's very proud of it. I know she said there was a good film in between there. And it's very kind of interesting that after all these years, they were somehow able to make a somewhat better version, and then the director's still not happy. And he criticized it heavily, I bet the Cannes audience will be misled into thinking I approved of this. I'm like, well, it's the only film that you are known for at this point, so shouldn't you be thrilled that your name's going to be finally on a product that you should be proud of?
Yeah, I mean, what's the saying? There's no such thing as bad publicity. Just take it. I mean, embrace Helen Mirren's ideology or surrounding this. This was what was happening at the time. I'm not ashamed of it. It was what it was. And she's gone on to, be Helen Mirren, Dame Helen Mirren. This didn't drag her down.
And it didn't drag down Peter O'Toole's career or Sir John Gielgud.
Yeah, and speaking of John Gielgud, he loved this movie. He said, I think he told Malcolm McDowell he liked it so much he paid to go watch it twice. So, I mean, of all the people in the cast that were upset about it, he's buying his own ticket. So that's good for him. I want to quickly go to the mailbag.
You've got mail.
My buddy Sean, who has been on the show before several times, he's a fan of this movie.
Lovely.
Yeah, he said when he watched this as a teenager, he says, I'm not sure what that says about me. Probably nothing good. Out of nostalgia, I bought the 4K from Umbrella. Not sure what that says about me either. Probably nothing good, but looking forward to the episode. So thanks, Sean.
That's wonderful. And I also bought the 4K.
And is the Umbrella 4K this ultimate cut, or is that a 4K version of the original?
It is. It's the ultimate cut, and then it includes the original and the X-rated and the 90-minute version that had been shown in England, because when they sent it to England, it had to be escorted off the plane because it was considered so heinous. And they slashed it to bits, and it was kind of disheartening to everybody involved, because by this point, of course, the actors had all kind of wiped their hands. And actually, Malcolm McDowell had a great story that he was kind of aware of what the film was turning into, because his father had gone with him to Rome. And he's like, his father would say, well, can I come on set? And Malcolm would say, he would check like the list for the day and go, oh, today's not a good day. And then finally it came to the end of the shoot, and his father just showed up in his car and like, enough of this nonsense. I'm going to go to the set. I'm going to see what you're doing. Well, on that day, Malcolm had to film that scene where he was giving that speech and then he just starts to urinate. And he was like, oh, my father's here. And I guess the set people were like, oh, do you need more coffee? He said, no, let's just get this over with. And so he starts the scene, and he just goes on with the speech. I am the Emperor of Rome, blah, 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 blah. And then he says, at the end of it, his father just looks at him, waves his cane, and goes, that was the best piece of acting I've ever seen, to be able to piss on command. And it's a great story, because it just shows you that set was a mess. It was nothing.
Literally and figuratively. And
I do hope his father is proud, because there is such a good performance by Malcolm in this. He really is. It's like he's extraordinary in this. There are scenes where he's heartbreaking, because he gives you that Caligula as a person was terrorized from day one by his uncle Tiberius. Every day he was told, oh, today might be the day I'm going to kill you. Today might be the day you're going to die. So for all his flaws, Malcolm was able to kind of portray that Caligula was, maybe he didn't start out to be this tyrannical monster. He was kind of created to be one, because that's all he saw was his uncle, this horrible monster. And I think if it had been explored better, it would have been, I think he could have gotten an Oscar nomination if it had been such a disaster.
Yeah, that's fair. I can imagine him looking at the call sheet and like what the production schedule looks like, and it's like orgy, beheadings, orgy, incest. Okay, I can't, Dad, there's no day that's good for you to come to set, all right? And the one that he show up to, it's one where he's pissing all over the place, and his dad is like, you know what? That's my boy. That is my son. And he's pissing on command. This is great stuff. But yeah, Malcolm is really exceptional in this movie. And I mean, you kind of see a little bit of maybe like the unhinged psychopathic portrayal that we see in Clockwork Orange, and bring a little bit of that kind of like same screw loose mentality to this character. But then again, living in a world where your uncle, right, is always about to murder you, as a grandfather, right, is like always on the verge of killing you. He got into a huge fight with the rest of the family, and you're the only surviving child because the rest of them
Yes.
died, which is kind of like not really explained as well as maybe it could have been, but
No.
sort of just growing up in Rome and the notion that the emperors are just kind of hunted by their family. Like, even Caligula, in wanting to produce an heir, is like, yeah, he's going to grow up to kill me at some point. So it's weird that you have to produce an heir as the emperor because that's what you're supposed to do. But then there is an acknowledgement that your end will be at the hands of your own child. So it's like this weird sort of dark cycle that they're all caught
So
in.
dark.
And I found myself, despite the violence, despite the orgies, I found myself thinking a lot about what it would be like to exist in Rome, especially as sort of like a smart, maybe member of the senatorial class, like someone who is obviously aware of what's going on. Like, what was it like to be Longinus in this, knowing full well that the emperor is insane, yet you work for him and you're just seeing all the crazy shit he's doing and you're trying to plead with him to do the right thing and to not starve the people for sport. You know, what is it like to be those senators in that situation and surrounded by this kind of unchecked, arrogant incompetence and just flat out cruelty a lot of the time? And so, like I said, despite all the stuff that is going on in this movie, I spent a lot of time thinking about the sort of ruling or governing class of Rome and what it was like to exist within the confines of that system. And maybe this movie didn't do that so well in the original version, but I feel like this version, the ultimate cut, really kind of pares everything down into a much more Shakespearean style of story where you're going through these big dramatic and personal swings with the characters.
The original did not do a good job of it. Was just, I mean, yes, it was there, but a lot of it was kind of hackneyed because that producer just placed sex every other scene, and it just becomes, you're just barraged with just endless amounts of orgies. You're losing, like, what's the plot again? Oh yeah, he's gonna kill his cousin, I'm gonna guess. Germanicus, I'm gonna guess. Cousin, adoptive son later.
Yeah.
It's the best not to follow the family tree of the emperors because you're just gonna get kind of lost by the end of it. You're gonna be like grandfather, uncle, aunt, sister. Can't tell the difference anymore. But I think the sad part about Caligula is that he never knew how to be a proper ruler because all he saw was his grandfather being the most heinous, corrupt monster, and then just killing people for no reason, which then he later internalized. But a lot of, like, they do a good job of exploring in the newer version that he had that fever, that he was bad before, but he was contained. He was more willing to forgive certain slights. He was not as monstrous. After that fever, and then with the death of Drusilla, he snapped. And then Caesonia, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, she didn't do much to stop him. That's also huge. Like, you kind of notice that she's, one moment she's kind of like disproving, and the next she's egging it on. She finds it fun. The fact that the scene that kind of really I paid attention to this time, at least this morning, was when he goes and gives that couple his wedding present. Drusilla is disproving. She thinks it's wrong. She kind of just walks off. Caesonia is smirking. And then later on in the film, she's like, oh, you shouldn't do that. The senators will be mad. And then the next scene, she's like laughing at something he does. I think she had to walk the fine line of, because he could have turned around and killed her.
Yeah.
And I think Helen Mirren does a great job of just balancing. It's not a big part, but she does so much with just her eyes and her physicality. And I think she's tremendous in the part. And I was very much impressed with what Teresa was able to do as Drusilla as well. She has such a sweetness. And I was curious what Maria Schneider would have been able to do with the part had she not stormed off the set. Which, props to her, understand completely.
Yeah, checks out. Yeah, when you mentioned Helen Mirren's character, I feel like she did a good job communicating something that I was feeling for a lot of other people in the room, in that everybody in the government in Rome, they were all sort of social climbing, opportunistic elites, right? I think there's a line where his grandfather tells him all senators are would-be Caesars. So there is always this looking upward to the position of Caesar as something that all of these people are aspiring to. They all feel like they're one or two, maybe like political moves away from being able to either like be one of the chief advisors or be Caesar or be in a position of power. So there's a lot of infighting for this power. And like you mentioned with Helen Mirren, it's a very precarious position to be in because these Caesars do have unchecked power. They snap their fingers and you die. So while it is probably appropriate to keep a healthy fear of this person, you are in a position where you're kind of forced to entertain their flights of fancy. And I think what we see a lot with Caligula is he has a contempt for everybody not having a spine. He's like, nobody stands up to me, nobody tells me I'm wrong, nobody challenges me. And so he just holds like an overall contempt for the position, the office, I guess, of Caesar. He likes the power and he likes, exerting his will over people, but he also does things sort of out of spite for the Senate, just to show them that they're all spineless cowards that are not going to say anything. And then the only other like one good senator we see throughout the movie has gone through that so much that he's takes his own life in the bathtub. And Caesar at the time, Tiberius, is trying to save him and he's pleading with him, just please let me die. It's like, we were friends, but that's all gone now. I just want to die because this is a horrible situation to be in. And we have Caligula witnessing that. And I think he's fully aware that like the time of that kind of man, that kind of person that the senator was, has passed. And so he's very much about pushing the buttons of all the people around him, like whether it be Drusilla or his wife or the Senate or Gemulus, his adopted son cousin, who
Nephew?
yeah, something like that, who he's always
He's
doing
something.
the same thing that his grandfather did to him, where he's like sort of teasing him, where like, I'm always going to be maybe trying to kill you. But let's use that to leverage you to tattle on this other guy so that we can publicly execute him. He's got a kind of demented mentality for the whole thing. And as I watch it, I was like, all this pointless bullshit, all this posturing, all the senators too afraid to lose their cushy existence. I was like, unfortunately, this is way too familiar of a situation. Like, this movie was very prescient for something in 1976 that was talking about Rome in what, like 1920 AD. Like, that storytelling has still remained pretty consistent and accurate over time.
I do. And I think what's really kind of interesting with kind of Malcolm in the early scenes, he has that boyish, innocent quality. He's like a afraid of his own shadow. He's scared, and naturally he should be. Tiberius in real life, he had killed his father, exiled his mother until she died.
Mm-hmm.
it was just him and he had 2 sisters, and he preferred Teresa. Whether or not they were incestuous, people debate. Obviously, this one was more interested in sensationalism. Let's just tell the popular culture Caligula. And Malcolm's able to he has that nervous tick where he's, yes, uncle, yes, grandfather, whatever Tiberius is. It's very hard to tell because he calls him like 50 different names. And, but he's not afraid to be also mean at the same time to his uncle Claudius, who's a very weak man, a very pathetic man, kind of in ways. And I kind of noticed that Malcolm's able to and then he slowly morphs into what stronger, and then he's willing to kill his Tiberius finally. And I do think in the X-rated cut, I think it's Caligula that does it, and in some cuts it's Macro that does it. It's interesting. I do prefer the version that's in this one. I think it fleshes him out a bit more. And Macro is such an interesting character because he believes in Caligula enough at least to be like, Tiberius sucks, let's get rid of him, I'm going to help you. And then for Caligula to be like, he knows too much, he's got to go. He's just got to go. And the way he goes about it is beautifully done because you're not expecting him to just be like, oh, he's a traitor. I'm not the problem, it's him. He uses that to his perfect advantage. And then he seizes power firmly.
Yeah, it's almost like performance art for Caligula in some of those moments where he's exerting his power over these people by making them stand in a certain arrangement, but he's very calculated about it while seeming a little bit cavalier and scattered. And I found it an interesting part of the portrayal because at least the way I see him, Caligula feels like a very young man. And I think Malcolm was maybe in his 30s, early to mid 30s when this was being made. But Caligula strikes me sort of as immature a lot of the time in the way that he behaves. Like he's, dancing around, sometimes at his own behest, sometimes when he's being told to. But a lot of the meetings that they have, like he can't sit still. He starts climbing on the furniture, right? So he does a lot of things that sort of point to him behaving in a very childlike manner. So in my head, I'm like, okay, how old is he? Because just because he's next in line, that kind of would automatically make him the emperor. It's not really dependent on his age at that point. But what is his maturity level when taking the throne? I feel like we see it being very low. But the more I thought about it, the more I couldn't help but consider other portrayals of young leaders in pop culture maybe pulling from this portrayal, right? I mean, King Joffrey in Game of Thrones is very much, I think, in line with this type of portrayal. I think that both of the brothers that portrayed the twin emperors or brother emperors in Gladiator 2 very much come from this same mentality. And reading that Leonardo DiCaprio infused a lot of this character portrayal into his role in Wolf of Wall Street makes a lot of sense. So even with the reputation that this movie has, I think it's clear that the portrayal by Malcolm did a lot for a lot of people in terms of informing their view of maybe people who go power hungry all the way to the point of just insane corruption.
And unfortunately, he sort of had Drusilla before to kind of rein him in. She would, and I think, and then he had kind of Caesonia. She would kind of rein him in occasionally if it didn't amuse her too much at what he was doing. Like you see her in one scene saying, they're going to hate you now. And he says, who cares as long as they fear me? And then the next scene, she's laughing at the fact and dressed up with a gold beard because he's named his horse Incantatus as a member of the Senate. And you get another glimpse of his immaturity when he says, let the horse speak. And then there's just the horse breaking wind, and then he just starts laughing at, which I will admit, I cracked a smile because it's a hilarious scene. But it shows just how immature he was. Like he had nobody going, oh my God, that grow up. Because I bet if someone had been like, oh, grow up, they would have been next on that little chopping block where they're buried up to their neck in the ground. And there's that spinning scythe of death, which I'm not sure it's a real life thing that existed, but it's gorgeous to look at.
It is. It's amazing. I'm like, what is this giant human lawnmower they have right here? Oh, coming to chop some heads off. And I mean, it's pretty gross, but that entire set, they said, is the size of like a football stadium with a 5-story tall machine that, walked down the aisle. Pretty crazy though. We've gotten like way into the movie, which is totally fine. I think there's a lot to talk about here, but I wanted to just pause momentarily because I want to do a little synopsis haiku action. And I know I had sort of prompted you late in the game, but you did write a good one, and I want you to share it because it's good.
Thank you, because I did kind of panic over. I was like, "Ooh, wait!" And so I kind of came up with, how to kind of. It was breasts are lit in the candlelight. Rome is it's living in sin, and then the gods wept. And I think it fits because Rome is just, at that point, it was just one hotbed of debauchery.
Sure was. I do have it right here, so I'm going to read it on your behalf, if that's okay.
Perfect.
Breasts gleam in torchlight. Rome feasts on pure sin. Gods weep from above. I think that's really good. So I wrote one too, just because I always do as a preparation. So, decadent delights. A Caesar feeds blood and lust. Deceit lies in Rome.
Fabulous. Gorgeous.
Getting better. Lots of practice. So we talked about a lot of the things that we like, reasons to appreciate the movie. But if you have to put yourself in the shoes of someone who hates this movie, why do you think someone would label this as a bad movie?
It's the campiness. There's no, it's not subtle in what they've done. There's no easing of tension. There are some scenes where are very gentle, but overall it just plunges you headfirst into something that you're probably not going to be comfortable with as an average viewer. You're probably going to go see this in theaters and go, oh, a historical epic. And then you're thinking it's going to be like Gladiator. And then you're just hit with incest. There's scenes of assault. There's scenes of really upsetting scenes of assault occasionally. And then there's just scenes where there's just blood, guts, and intestines being strewn about. Decapitations, childbirth scenes, which are graphic, which was something I wasn't really aware could be shown in a film until I watched this. And I can see why Ebert would have walked out and just thought, piece of shit, what a travesty. I can see what he meant. It is not easy to watch. It's not pleasant to watch at times. And the script is let down occasionally. Like there's some parts which still don't make sense, but they did what they had to do with this. Just bring it back to life. They had to. And it's a bit of a mess. It's a messy, messy film. There's just, the performances are good. And I would say the biggest flaw that the film has is that producer had unlimited power. He snuck in and inserted those hardcore pornographic scenes, and they just destroyed the picture. Even in the miniature versions that are popped into the new one, it just takes you out of the picture a bit. And you're like, oh, another one. Why? The story is so interesting.
Yeah.
And it's a disservice. It's a disservice to what the actors are trying to do, because I think they went into this as a straight costume drama. And then what they're left with is a sex-filled historical drama with just heavy scenes, dark scenes.
Yeah, I guess that's what happens when your producer is the publisher of Penthouse magazine. He's like, I'm still making this for myself and for my audience at some point, so I'm gonna shoot all this B-roll and just inject it back into the film. We're gonna lock the director out of the editing room so that he can't stop us. It's a little insane, but maybe that's what drew him to the story of Caligula in the first place. But I want to go and take a look back at the trailer for this movie and see kind of what this movie was meant to be sold as to a wider audience back in 1979. From the creators of Domusfit and the makers of the Saturnalia swing, this episode is brought to you by Aurelia, the intimate wellness experience inspired by ancient rituals and reborn for today's discerning sensualist. Rooted in the legacy of Imperial Rome's most indulgent wellness philosophies, the Aurelia cycle blends rhythmic repetition, focused breathwork, and self-powered mindfulness into one transformative pleasure circuit. With patented multi-position immersion and their exclusive oral flow guidance system with interchangeable lingua, you're the master of your own wellness journey as Aurelia takes you beyond the boundaries of touch into a realm of connection once reserved for emperors and those who dared to kneel before them. It's not just a machine, it's a movement. So get your Aurelia cycle today and unwind the empire. And now, back to the show. So let's grab that. Okay, let's see.
They spoke of it first in whispers. Then it took the media by storm.
I have existed from the morning of the world, and I shall exist until the last star falls from the heavens. Although I have taken the form of Caius Caligula, I am a god.
It's a great line.
Lucioni and Penthouse Films International present Caligula.
You amateur.
Amateur.
No treachery could equal his evil. No evil was more treacherous.
He's mad.
Caligula, the emperor who devoured Rome. Malcolm McDowell, Teresa and Savoy, Helen Mirren, Peter O'Toole, John Gielgud. No rumor can match the reality. Caligula, rated R.
Yeah, it looks pretty straightforward for the most part as a costume drama, like you said. Obviously, there's some stuff that you can't include in there, but this movie being rated R also, that's the lie.
That's the biggest lie I've ever heard in my life. That is a falsehood.
I think the director's cut or whatever the ultimate cut that I just watched was rated X. So if the original was worse in terms of its pornographic portrayals, then I don't know how you get an R with that unless you submit something to the MPAA that isn't the movie that you're going to show.
Yes, I mean, I've seen the X-rated version, and I can tell you what they are claiming is innocent. Like they're just playing as if it is so much worse in that X-rated version than this X-rated version. You see like just lingering shots of the just the scenes and the stuff they do in those scenes, and that trailer is very misleading for anyone who wants to watch the original. And I pity anyone who just goes, I've heard about the original, I'm going to turn it on and show my family, because I know
Right.
there are some people who like to do that. They think,
I'm into Roman history right now. Let's check out Caligula. Oops.
can't shove that to grandma.
Oh no. I mean, you never know. Maybe grandma's cool. Maybe she can deal with it, but
Maybe she used to date Malcolm McDowell.
yeah, maybe. Maybe indeed. Well, it's always interesting to look at the trailers versus the movie that we end up with, because a lot of the time, like, cutting a good trailer it's a whole different process than making a good movie. And I think, when you're making something that's maybe 60 seconds long, 30 seconds if you're doing a teaser, you can communicate a lot in terms of tone and attitude, but you have to be selective with what you show. Obviously, you can't be showing orgy scenes in the trailer. I don't think there's not even the suggestion of sex.
No.
It feels very Shakespearean in its portrayal, and even the way that the sort of the cast list is shown there as they're introducing the actors feels like almost like a stage production. So I can't imagine walking into that movie thinking like, hey, I'm just here for a period drama, and then like,
kind of
oh,
like
I wasn't
yeah.
expecting the fellatio. Okay, well, oh, there it is again. Oh, all right. Well,
Is that cunnilingus? Is that allowed?
It's Cunnilingus, the sequel. How do you feel about doing a little bit of trivia right now?
Oh, I'd love to do some trivia.
Time for trivia. We'll see. I had some difficulty pulling like questions that I felt were answerable in like an easy way. So I did my best, and we'll see how it goes. Question number 1. What famous actor-director was initially offered the role of Tiberius?
Ooh. Laurence Olivier.
Ooh, that's a good guess. It was, from what I read, it was Orson Welles.
Oh.
Declined. I think he's offered $1 million for the role and turned it down.
Mm.
Yeah, that would have been certainly an interesting portrayal, but Laurence Olivier would have been a fun one too.
I swear he was attached to this at some point. I swear. Like somewhere I read that he was approached and he was just like, no.
The guy from Penthouse brings you a briefcase full of money. Don't ask too many questions. Just show up the set on Monday.
Well, like Peter O'Toole did.
He's like, can I bring my weed? And they said, yes, Peter, you can bring your weed. And he did, because I guess he had given up alcohol at that point, but
lovely man.
Several set rumors and quotes from Malcolm McDowell point to him being high throughout the course of filming, which,
I don't
whatever.
blame him.
I don't blame him either. Okay, let's go to question 2. So, all in, from front to back, how long did it take the movie to get made and distributed?
Ooh, I just read this morning, but I think it took almost a year or 2, if I remember. I think it was a year or 2.
It
took a very long time.
6 years in total. It was 4 years to make the film itself.
Oh
and
my
then
God.
2 years to get it distributed. So I think I read
It's a
principal
nightmare.
photography was, or it finished filming, right? December of 74, and then didn't get released until 1980.
1980.
Quite a trek to get this movie made. But then again,
that blows my mind.
Yeah, you show up in England with the film, and you're ready to get it into British theaters, and like MI6 is there on the phone. Caligula has arrived. Make sure we confiscate that and take it straight to the censor's office. So they're jumping through hurdles. I mean,
it's a nightmare. I mean, that entire production is just a nightmare.
Indeed. So third and final question. The movie, like it had issues in England, was actually banned in many countries, including being banned in Russia until 1993. It is still banned in which European nation?
Ooh. It is Italy.
No, it is Belarus.
It is not Italy.
It is not. At least that is. I mean, maybe it still is, but the one that I read was Belarus, and you know, this is the internet, so who knows?
Who knows what the trivia questions?
Yeah.
And then we just got
could all be bogus, but at the time that this was made, this was the most expensive independent film ever. The rumors, or at least the speculation as to why Brass and Vidal fought to get their names removed. Gore Vidal actually sued the production to get his name removed from the screenwriting credit.
He did.
He did. So a lot of the speculation around that was that, oh, the movie was so bad, or the movie was this thing that they didn't want to be attached to. And really, with Brass, he didn't like the fact that he was locked out of the editing process. So that's why he was pissed. And then Gore Vidal was like, you changed the intent of the script and the character that I wrote, so I don't want to be associated with the thing that you're making. So it wasn't as much about the totality of the film's reputation as it was sort of some behind the scenes stuff. And as you mentioned, Roger Ebert hated this film, gave it a 0, and it made it onto his all-time worst films ever list. So that's exactly how much that he hated it.
I mean, I don't blame him. I mean, just from Tinto Brass's reputation, from what I've learned of how he acted on set, it should be no surprise that there were just constant issues. I'm not sure if you know, but there was this poor woman who was with the Napoleon Mastiff. It mauled her. And do you think he cared one iota about her? No, no, no. His first response was, how dare you not film it? And then when an actor got stabbed by Peter O'Toole because Peter missed the bag of fake intestines, he was stabbed straight in the gut, and Tinto filmed it. He did not care about anyone on that set. I mean, he would get angry during the orgy scenes if he felt they weren't doing good enough, so he would go and do it himself. From all counts, this man was a monstrosity to work with. Malcolm said he enjoyed him mostly, but he also had problems with how he directed certain things. And Helen just kind of said she kind of avoided him as best she could.
You would definitely want to avoid him at that point. So I don't blame anybody who did. There's an interesting sort of anecdote from Malcolm McDowell too, how he says that his car was attacked by a mob of extras and productions assistant when he arrived on set, because no money came in from New York to pay them. So there was a strike that delayed the production, another hurdle in getting this movie made. But until they were finally paid, they didn't actually start production. But you know, you're showing up and there's already not money to pay the people that are working on the movie. So, I mean, that's production all the way from the very top. So that's probably a Guccione issue more than anything. So it's wild. It's kind of a miracle to think that the movie actually exists given the circumstances. And I think, you know, Peter O'Toole was the one who said that he would be surprised if the movie actually ever saw the light of day. So the fact that not only does it exist, but that there was a big enough push for the preservation of the original film to wind up at the point where we have an ultimate cut, that's kind of wild in and of itself. Just if the movie that was released in 1980 or whatever existed with all the problems that it had and became a cult classic over time and just had that kind of treatment. But to have, I can't think of the guy's name right now for some reason. The producer who made the ultimate cut, the historian,
It is.
it's escaping me.
I googled it just now because I was like, I figure at some point both of us should say his name.
I had it. I had it on one of my screens, but it's gone.
Thomas Nigo.
Thank you.
Negovan.
Thank you. That is correct. So to be enough of a historian to want to actually restore this and find the original footage, the original audio recordings that were not the stuff that was ADR'd over, it's a huge labor of love to be able to pull something like that off. And I think he deserves credit for putting in the work and the time to actually make sure that happened. So credit where credit is due.
And I know that Malcolm McDowell wrote on Instagram that because of the brilliant work of Thomas, one of my best performances has finally come to light after 47 years. It took 47 years for this film to kind of work its way back around the public consciousness. I really kind of was annoyed with how low the critical reviews were for this. I was like, it's a much better product. I think it's a shame that he didn't get anything for it, despite how controversial it was. He should have gotten something, as Malcolm did. I think maybe this is weird to say, but I think it's one of my favorite film performances by an actor ever, because he understood this character, and there's scenes where he's just heartbreaking because he's in so much pain. Like he's a tortured individual. He's not some monster. He behaves like a monster, but inside he's just a broken shell of a human being. Yeah, and I think it's such a good movie.
There's an article on IndieWire that is talking about this cut, saying it reveals the great Malcolm McDowell and Helen Mirren performances that existed all along. And then the subtitle says the ultimate cut restores and reconstructs the notorious pornographic epic to find the artistry beneath the surface, but it still contains wall-to-wall nudity and carnage. So I like that, because it really does bring to light this great performance that was overshadowed by this film. And I'm glad that Malcolm was able to sort of come to terms with having an appreciation for the restoration and actually showcasing the thing that he was probably proud of at the time, and then had to walk away from and basically disown because of what the final product was like. But it speaks to the value of film, which I've heard from actors and directors, as an editor's medium, because, it doesn't matter what you shoot, doesn't matter what you actually do that gets recorded. If it doesn't make it through the editing process, then who knows? So I think it's a really good testament to having an editor that works well with the director and has a good understanding of what the vision of the film is supposed to be. So getting to recontextualize something like this so many years later, like you said, it almost changed the movie completely. And while it doesn't pull it out of maybe the decadence and the debauchery, it highlights the elements of the story and the characterizations that had me not thinking so much about the sex stuff. Given it was my first time ever watching this movie, I wasn't really focused on that. I was like, oh, look at this. There is a 3-story sex chamber full of sex slaves where Grandpa is introducing Caligula to that. I'm like, oh, okay, this is tradition you pass on in this family, I see. But a lot of that stuff just kind of felt like background noise. So I think it's a testament to the people that worked on getting this movie back to maybe the roots of what it was supposed to be. But how do you feel about going over to the bonus wheel? I know trivia didn't go so well, but that's, I think, on me a little bit. And that the trivia was difficult to come by. So let's just go to the wheel.
I really don't blame you. It really is hard to find trivia for that, Bill.
Yeah, because there's a lot of like behind the scenes stories, and here's he said, she said kind of stories about what happened. But in terms of something I could turn into a trivia question, wasn't super easy. So we'll give the wheel some spins just for shits and giggles, and we'll see what we get out of it. So this is a fun one for this movie. What movie snack would you pair with Caligula?
Oh my goodness, that's a great question. A charcuterie board.
Yeah,
I think
cheese, wine, grapes. Definitely got to have grapes there.
Some wine, some champagne. Just make it decadent, like chocolate. You should just like have cake as well. Just make it a decadent feast worthy of a overeat.
Yeah, I want a giant penis and vagina cake for this party. That's that in and of itself. Like, they had the capability of making a cake. At first, I thought it was like piece of like ham or turkey or something that they sliced to look that way. But then I see the giant phallus cake as well. So I was like, I'm impressed by these bakers from that era there, that they were able to pull that off. There's no fondant back in ancient Greece, or ancient Rome, I should say. So
how do they even remember
stuff?
Who modeled it?
Is that customary for the bride and groom to model before their wedding? I don't know. There's a lot of strange practices coming out of Rome.
Come on, proprietarius. Let's go and get. Let's just pose. It won't take too long. I mean, if you go to Pompeii, they actually have penis in the ground. Penis walkways.
Penis walkways. Wow. Okay.
Yes. It was a major luminarum city where they had prostitutes everywhere, so they were huge. So it couldn't possibly be very surprising that they might have penis caves in ancient Rome.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of phallic imagery throughout the whole film, even in the wet nursing sort of lineup that they have there. The bottles are penis shaped. There's just large penises being carried all over in the background. One of my favorite characters in this movie is, I guess he was the slave owner who finds Caligula in the slave pits and then becomes like his best friend, the deaf mute slave owner. There's a point where he's just carrying around like a giant penis. For some reason I don't understand, but that's like his party favor. And I mean, he's a magician too, but that guy, and the fact that he sort of just welcomed him into the royal picture, it's like, this is just going to be my dude now. That was one of my favorite things about the movie, because it doesn't make a ton of sense, because there's scenes where he's just on the sidelines doing weird stuff. He's always mimicking everything Caligula does, which is also very strange. So when that's taken out of context, I think it mirrors the kind of like childlike portrayal that we get from Caligula at times. But yeah, that was a lot of fun. I think the movie is funnier than it maybe was given credit for as well. But again, having not seen the original, I don't know how ridiculous. So I kind of want to watch it just to see how different it is. But yeah,
it's special. That's the best word I can describe it. It's special. You'll walk away a changed person. Your eyes will feel like they've been blinded with just enough boobs. Just an eye out.
Just walk away. Just be like, I think I've finally seen enough. Okay, let's go to one more question from the wheel. We'll get two more in there, but this is a fun one too. What is a song that embodies the energy of this movie?
Oh, that's a great question. This might be a bit weird, but Afternoon Delight.
Yeah, I can see that.
Or Love to Love You, Baby by Donna Summer.
Yeah. Okay. No, those are good choices. I like that. All right, let's go to one more from the bonus wheel. It's kind of a two-part question, but it is a good one. If you could ask one character from this film a question, who would that person be, and what is the question?
Oh, what was my favorite? I would say Caesonia.
Good choice.
And I would question. Well, firstly, I would ask a stereotypical question of, "Girl, where did you get those fabulous clothes, and where can I get some?" And secondly, are the rumors true? Because what Drusilla was gossiping about was very interesting to me. I didn't know much about her, so I always thought that was interesting. So I'd probably just ask her, "What's your interest? Like, what are you into when you're not massaging Caligula's ass with your feet?"
Yeah. I think she would be a good choice because she has clearly seen a lot of the like behind the scenes stuff that is happening inside the Empire, and she kind of has to go along with it. She's privileged in her position, and I think she's the kind of character that knows a lot more than she lets on, because there's a lot of moments of dialogue between them where she'll say something which is intelligent. He'll kind of push back, and then you'll see her immediately sort of give him the coded answer, which includes the sort of unspoken "please don't kill me" part of the equation. So I feel like she's a lot smarter than she gets to really show in the film. And had he not been such a selfish prick, I think he actually would have had a good queen as somebody to help him rule if he were actually interested in doing those kinds of things. But he really wasn't. So she kind of just had to play along.
And I do find it really interesting that he's so overprotective of her, what she might be doing. So he surrounds her with homosexual eunuchs. And that line, like, is such a throwaway line, but it cracks me up every time I hear it. They're all homosexual eunuchs. And Drusilla's just like, oh, well, okay, I guess that might work.
That's right, little sister. I thought this one through.
And I think she's just thinking, okay. I think she's just tired of her brother at this point.
Yeah, if given the opportunity, I would probably ask her some questions. Like, Drusilla, like, what is really going on here? Obviously, you guys have this weird relationship. Was this always the case? You know, I want to know more about her story, because when she says come to my house, it looks like she lives at, or at least it's her house where the priestesses of Isis, where the priestesses gather and celebrate. So, like, that's kind of the equivalent, I guess, in Rome of the Senate, is these priestesses. They have their own sort of hierarchy, and you know, I'm sure they know a lot of the town's secrets as well, and I'm sure there's a lot of political maneuvering within that group as well, especially when a lot of those women are wives of the senators. So I could see a lot of like juicy gossip making its way through that circle, and you know,
all we want is gossip.
Yeah, nothing wrong with a little hot goss. Okay, well, now that we've gone to the wheel, we're going to go to more or less, and very simple. I just want you to tell me something that you want more of in the movie and something that you want less of in the movie.
Well, when I watched it, I would have liked to have seen just a bit more character development for the female leads, and just explore them a little bit more, so they're not just wallpaper based.
Yeah.
To be disrobed and kind of walked all over. And maybe give Dame Helen Mirren her big acting chop scenes, although they gave her several wonderful scenes. But what I'd like to see less of is definitely the sex scene. I would love to have just gotten more of a story. I think it's such a good story. They could have just turned it into probably one of the greatest historical epics of all time if it had been played right. It's gorgeous.
It's a very interesting story in and of itself, and in different hands with different focus. Like you said, it could have been a significantly different film. I can't help but, even in the version that's 2 hours and 58 minutes, like, you probably could still cut 15 minutes out of that version of the movie, and a lot of it is just peripheral debauchery. So I like the big set piecing, though. I like the extravagance and the costumes, and some of the shots are framed very interestingly because you have these big, gigantic set pieces that are super colorful. So I love all of that stuff, and Malcolm's great. I could have gone for a little bit more Peter O'Toole, but I understand that he has to sort of make way in order for the story to evolve. So I started it late last night. I was doing social media stuff for the other show, and I was like, okay, he just became emperor. This is a great time to pause. I'm going to come back. And then as I was getting ready this morning, my wife's like, you going to go start the orgy now? And I'm like, I got 2 more hours of that orgy left before I get to record. So I feel like, probably you could still take 10 to 15 minutes out. I don't know that it makes a difference being at 2 hours, 45 minutes or 3 hours. You're kind of splitting hairs at that point, but not a huge problem. I think.
It's perfect the way it is, kind of.
Yeah. I think I've covered basically everything that I was going to cover. Is there anything that you wanted to talk about specifically before we move on?
I could just say that I think what it does best is that it transports you into ancient Rome. Like, there's not for a second that you're just not, you feel like you've time traveled into a different world. It's gorgeous. And I wish more films could be like that. I wish we could go back to practical sets and just hand-dealt props. Enough of this green screen. Like, Gladiator 2 is painful. Like, for me, it was painful because I watched this and I go and watch that. You can tell the difference. There's so much love put into each set. I mean, the marble, gold, the temples. It's just beautiful.
I agree. I think of that sort of joke or meme that was going around on the internet of the thing that, like, men just think about ancient Rome randomly all the time, right? And when I watched this movie, I was thinking a lot about ancient Rome and, like, what it was like to live there. And was it really this insane all the time? Like, what was it like to be a regular person in this environment? Because when we see Caligula out on the streets, it's like, this doesn't look great. There's a lot of people being dragged around in cages. It's very dirty. Like, hookers or prostitutes are constantly grabbing him on the street. There's like a big public toilet that's got pigs in it, and they just all defecate in the same area. None of that looks super appealing, but like living the palace life, living the senator life where you have a house and you have servants and sex slaves and all that stuff, I'm like, okay, I understand why the senators were probably always conniving to keep power. But it did make me think about Rome itself a lot more than I probably usually would. Even watching other stories that take place in Rome, I feel like the guiding hand sort of narrows everything down, where I feel like I just thought about this a lot more broadly, and I don't know why, but maybe that's just a testament to the movie itself.
I think it makes 100% sense that you think about the politics of it all, because it reminds me of The Favorite by Yorgos Lanthimos. There's a line that Nicholas Hoult says, 1 minute you're the favorite, the next minute you're wondering what syphilitic whore's fingers in your ass. Because at the drop of the hat, those senators could have lost their power and they'd be right where their slaves are at. They could easily be stripped of all their titles and lands, which Caligula does. he arrests all the senators who didn't do his version of Simon Says, which is one of the best parts of the film. Caesar says, dance. Caesar says, and I think it does make you think that if they didn't tiptoe that line every single day, if they weren't so conniving, they could be the ones scrubbing some man's foot. And it's not a pleasant life. You don't get paid very much, probably, and you have to wash clothes with urine, and it's not a pleasant life.
Yeah, it doesn't sound so pleasant, but yeah, it had me thinking about the technical aspects of Roman life in a way that I maybe usually don't. So maybe that's where all that came from. Maybe that's where that meme started, is people were watching Caligula and were really got fascinated with Rome. But I think it's a good time now where we go to Critics Corner, and we're going to mix it up a little because there was, of course, the original run of critics that watched the original version of this film and hated it, including Roger Ebert and his Zero. So I'm going to read some of that, and then I'm going to also balance it out with some reviews for the newer version, because I think it's important to keep in mind that this ultimate cut is more well received. So like in terms of being fair, but we'll start with Roger Ebert because Zero's pretty low. He says Caligula is sickening, utterly worthless, shameful trash. If it is not the worst film I've ever seen, that makes it all the more shameful. People with talent allowed themselves to participate in this travesty. He's really not a fan of this. And I see we got an F on the board here. There's a lot of bad scores here. I'll try to find one that's a little closer to the bottom. Okay, here's a 1 out of 5. This is Eddie Harrison from Film Authority. And this is clipped from a longer quote, but it says, it doesn't take a lot of tinkering to ruin a film, and the much tinkered with 1980 version of Caligula is a mess. With the guts of Vidal's script replaced by irrelevant sex, then having the sex removed, rendering the result utterly pointless.
Yeah.
I understand where he's coming from, though. You get rid of the script to include the sex, then you take out the sex, and now you're just left with a void.
It's just a mess, and each I can see where they're kind of coming from a little bit.
Yeah. Well, we've got, let's see, this is a 43 out of 100. That's a little better on the boards. This is Brian Webster from Apollo Guide. Never heard of that. But Brian says, simply a curiosity, a laughable relic of a failed effort to bring explicit sex movies to the masses. Was it failed, though? It's the highest grossing adult movie ever. It made $20 million in its opening weekend. So it made its budget back immediately. I mean,
I disagree with that entirely.
Yeah.
It's not failed at all.
I think calling it a relic of that era may be true, but yeah, I think he's sort of misunderstanding, because this is also a review from 2007, so it's not exactly one from the 70s when it came out. But we'll flip the board now, and we're going to go over to the good scores, or the better scores, from Metacritic. We've got, let's see, 1, 2, 3 60s on the board, and that's the New York Times, the Guardian, the Wall Street Journal, and you can pick which one we're going to read.
I'm very kind of curious about what the Guardian said.
This is Peter Bradshaw from the Guardian. Says it all makes for something startling, amusing, and bizarre. You're not wrong.
He's definitely not wrong. It is very startling, and it is very bizarre. The prison with the multiple eyes.
Yeah, right. I feel like he's at a point where he doesn't even know whether he likes it or not, but he's like, I definitely saw that. And it had an impact, and I'm not sure how I feel yet.
But it wasn't too bad.
Not too bad. And overall, the Metascore for the Ultimate Cut is a 62. So it's right in like borderline territory for this show, but still kind of underneath, we would say, the range of good films, at least on the scorecards. So we're going to go to RogerEbert.com because this is another writer who had to redeem Roger's zero. This is Peter Subsinski. Gave it a 63, says this is not a film for everyone by a long shot. Still, those willing to take a chance and embrace it on its own very distinct and occasionally deranged terms are likely to find themselves agreeing with the ultimate assessment of Mirren, who once described it as an irresistible mix of art and genitals. I like that.
I agree with that entirely.
Yeah.
I mean, it's definitely an interesting mix of genitals and art. And there is such art beneath it that I'm glad that people are starting to kind of warm up to it a bit more. It's definitely not going to be something you go, let's make this a date night movie.
Yeah, probably not. It's like, you want 3 hours of this for a date night? Nah, probably not. But maybe with the right person. But we'll let's go to Film Threat. And this is Michael Talbot Haynes, gave it a 70. Says, while I appreciate getting a cult classic, a new coat of 4K, to be mean for the stream in fine fashion, Caligula, the ultimate cut, is not your grandpa's Caligula. Well, yeah, because it was re-edited and remade. I don't know. It's kind of a... He liked it. He gave it a 70 out of 100, but aside from praising a 4K release, doesn't really have much to say. Sorry, Michael.
Yeah, I think a lot of modern reviews can kind of be more like, look how crystal cut this DVD looks, instead of actually delving into the art of it, which is...
Yeah. Because, yeah, for what it's worth,
I'm more
like,
interested,
it looked good, but, I mean, it's very superficial. All right, so we're going to close it out with the Austin Chronicle, and this is Richard Whitaker. Gave it an 89 out of 100. Said, art historian Thomas Negovan has excavated countless hours of rushes and raw footage from the archives to assemble a new film, hewing as close as possible to Vidal's original story. In doing so, the debauchery, majesty, and brutality are finally revealed in all their unhinged glory. There you go.
I mean, that's a perfect review, and 89 out of 100 is lovely.
Yeah. Richard,
you
I
could have
think...
been at 90.
Yeah. No. Can't give it a 90. We're stopping at 89. If we cross into the nines, he's gonna lose his job. So just shy of the 9 range. But I think he encompasses a lot of the things that we spoke about because it was a historian who was interested in this. It's a lot about an exercise in film preservation, and I think protecting the original intent of the film in a way that the one that we saw in the 80s did not do. And like he says, in doing so, it is a much better blend of the brutality, the debauchery, and the majesty all at the same time. And yes, it is unhinged, but if you think of it in the terms of maybe this is a stage portrayal that just happens to be on film, I feel like that's probably why it worked for me in the way that it did. It felt like a play that we happened to be watching on a film medium, because a lot of the characterizations are dialed up, like Malcolm and Peter O'Toole especially feel like they're playing to a live audience versus playing to the camera. And I think that for me is what makes those roles stand out.
Yes, I mean, it definitely does kind of feel like a play. It kind of reminds me of a Man for All Season from back in the 60s. And it reminds me of Anne of 1,000 Days from back in the 60s. They very much played not to really the camera, but just directly to the audience. So you always felt like a bit stagey, but in some films it really works, in others it doesn't. And I mean, with Caligula, I think you need that staginess, or else it would just be an over the top hammy.
Yeah.
It would not be a very good film to have to sit through for 2 hours.
No. And I mean, ultimately, it didn't feel as long as I thought it was going to. I mean, I did break it up, but it didn't feel like a huge undertaking for me to watch it, where sometimes I know, hey, this movie's going to be long. I mean, this whole new season of White Lotus, every episode felt like it was 3 hours long. So for something like this to kind of feel more brisk than I anticipated, I think it says a lot about like where my focus was and how the story moved along pacing wise. But now that we've gone through Critics Corner, I want to get your gateway drug movie for Caligula. So obviously the original version of this movie isn't super easy to find right now. The ultimate cut is a little bit more readily available, but for people who have maybe never seen Caligula and are considering watching it, what's a good movie that's like a launch pad to get them to Caligula?
Fellini's Satricon would be a good jumping point. I think maybe Cleopatra with Elizabeth Taylor. It's 10 times longer than Caligula, and it's worse than Caligula in terms of. But I think if you're trying to get into the big budget, you're just trying to get into the costume dramas, you could do no worse than Joseph L. Mankiewicz, Cleopatra with Elizabeth Taylor. It's not a good movie. In fact, you could probably cover it on here. It's not a good movie. It's a mess. And it's just a mess. And that production history is a nightmare too. And I think, like Caligula, it was overly expensive to make. And if you're going to want to think, if that was bad in the 60s, imagine how bad this was to flop 10 years to 20 to 30 years later down the road. It's an easy film to digest too. It's 4 hours long, not easy to sit through. There's intermissions, because back then they had intermissions, so you can easily just get up and walk off while Cleopatra changes her 60th outfit. And I don't know, I would say Fellini's Satricon is kind of, maybe it's not a very good gateway, but it's close enough to where you can kind of jump into it. But it's very strange. So you have to be very much into strange movies. So I think easier to digest would be Cleopatra. If you're into weird shit, Fellini.
Fair. You know, I'm so tempted to say Gladiator because it deals with so much of the sort of political climbing, but then also dresses it up with sword and sandals action. But, you know, at its core, this is the story of an emperor who is trying to choose an heir, but he's got a son who's going to kill him. Sounds familiar. Then that son takes the throne, is shitty, and then now there are plots to remove that shitty person from the throne.
Yeah.
So I feel like from a place of like, if you like Roman history and the kind of stories that come with the infighting of the political structure, Gladiator is a good one. But I think maybe something like Hamlet as well, Kenneth Branagh's Hamlet, would be a good offering in terms of the dramatic side of things, because in that it's like, you know, comes home, dad has been murdered, his mom's marrying his uncle, so there's a lot of the similar positioning within the monarchical society there. So it's not quite as violent at all as something like Gladiator or Caligula, but I think either of those would be good choices. But I feel like if you watch,
fantastic.
I think if you watch Gladiator as a primer and then you're like, hey, I kind of like Rome and what was going on then. And then you watch Caligula, you'd be like, well, it's not Gladiator, but it still operates on a lot of similar themes. So it's a much more like mainstream, I think, some idea to latch onto. Maybe not Gladiator 2, although you would see some similarities between the portrayals from Fred Hechinger and his name is escaping me. He was just in another movie I watched.
Joseph Quinn.
Joseph Quinn, thank you. The way that they portray the Emperor is very much like how Malcolm McDowell does. I mean, not quite as good, but I think you see influences there. So I think, yeah, I think there's reason to start there. But
yes, I mean, and that kind of reminds me of Octavian with Roddy McDowell and Cleopatra. He portrays him as almost as maniacal, but kind of, he's deeply intelligent, but there's that little glimmer of madness. He's power hungry. You have Rex Harrison as a terrific Caesar. Like, he's beyond. He makes the entire film. If they could have just snipped out the Cleopatra Mark Antony, it could have been a fantastic biography of just Julius Caesar and the politics that went into him trying to make himself an emperor. And then you have Octavian just seizing power. And I would say that if you had to jump from, like if you're going to go all in on ancient Rome, then you have to see I, Claudius, the TV series from the 70s with Derek Jacobi, because that deals directly with, it's just after Caligula has been murdered, and it deals with Claudius's reign, and it deals with kind of how Augustus was poisoned by his wife with poisoned figs. And if you're really into the camp of it, Dame Sean Phillips has a classic line that I think anyone who is into Gladiator and all that, they'll really get into that. She just looks up as someone comes in, by the way, don't touch the figs. And it's very interesting just how much you can dive into ancient Rome. There's just, I guess it was huger back then. People were just so fascinated by ancient Rome back then, which I think contributed to that meme. People just, you had Cleopatra, you had Anthony and Cleopatra from the 40s, you had I, Claudius in the 70s, you had Caligula, which probably really jump-started some stuff. And he was also portrayed in a bunch of sword and sandal films really well by an actor I can't remember, but it was Richard Burton's films. They're also great. I think Rome, just as a topic, is just endlessly versatile. You can easily just make a film about Nero. You can make a film about Caligula. And at the end of the day, you learn so much. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, Spartacus, right? Also Ben-Hur, so classic Hollywood. Ben-Hur. Very fascinated with it.
Vadis is another one. That's what it's like, a whole who's who of film stars. Like, they snuck Elizabeth Taylor in as a Christian who's about to be fed with the lion. They had Sophia Loren, Deborah Carr.
Great cast.
It's a fantastic movie. But they really did care about costume dramas in a way that I think modern audiences just aren't as sadly enthused.
Yeah.
But hopefully Gladiator 2 sparked some interest, because it wasn't a bad movie. It was good.
Yeah, and we're going to get Christopher Nolan's Odyssey as a result, kind of his enjoyment of Gladiator 2. So, maybe we're trending back in that direction, but we'll see.
Please be a good movie.
Please, right? Do you have anything that you want to plug before we put a bow on this and get out of here?
I'm excited to be having some guests on my podcast, including at some point I'm supposed to have Skadoo Sean, who's a lovely friend. If you, not to plug the country podcast, it's in my home, but
that's what we're here for. You talk about what you're working on, and that's cinematically you.
And I get to, at some point, I'm supposed to have a very special guest, Lynn. Roden has agreed to jump on it. We're going to discuss the works of Mike Leigh, who I'm a massive fan of. like to the point where if I could watch another director, I would never watch another film by his. And that would be nice. And I'm looking forward to exploring this podcast. I've never actually done a podcast. And this is my one kind of attempt at it.
Ah, very cool. Well, I'm glad to hear it. I'm excited to see what's in store for you next. And we're going to work together a little bit on the Cunk'd podcast. So,
and I'm honored.
We'll figure out all that stuff. But if people want to find you, do you want to include your social media for people that may want to talk movies with you?
You can find me at Jacob P. Crawford on Twitter. And because I used to refer to it as X. And you can find me on Instagram at Jacob Crawford 43. And I do have a blog that I'm kind of developing, so that would have to. It's called The Cinematic Diva.
I like it. All right. Well, I'll make sure that anybody that wants to find that can easily do so. Jake, I want to say thank you for taking the time to come on the show, talk with me, and make me watch a movie that probably was long overdue. It's a movie that I always knew existed, but just never really had the interest to watch. And then after watching it, I'm like, hey, this movie's not bad at all. It does a lot of things that I like. It's got style for days and some great performances as well. So thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. I've admired this podcast for a very long time. It's an honor. And you are just a true artist. So thank you for doing what you do.
Well, I wouldn't be doing it without people like you that want to come on the show and talk to me. So thank you too. Thanks to Jake for being a good sport and bringing Caligula to the show. We had actually recorded that episode quite a while ago, several months ago, in fact, and there just hadn't been an opening in the schedule to really let it shine and have its own moment. But I'm really glad that we got to do it because the movie's actually really good once you're able to get past its reputation. You can check out Jake and I's other project, Cunk'd, a very unofficial podcast that is focused on the work and the philosophy of Philomena Cunk'd, and Jake's show, Hollywood Reverie, The Dream Factory Remembered. So check the show notes for links. And of course, thank you to everyone who took the time to listen to the episode. I know there's a seemingly infinite number of options when it comes to podcasts, and I appreciate you letting me into your ear holes and hopefully into your hearts. In all seriousness, though, time is valuable, and I am very grateful that you've entrusted me with yours. If you enjoy the show, please consider leaving a review or at least a rating and telling a friend about it. If you don't enjoy it, then maybe let's keep that between us. As I mentioned in the open, the new members only section is in fact live at badmovieswelove.captivate.fm/support, where you're going to get access to a bunch of goodies for only $5 a month. And I would absolutely love to hear from you, so if you have a bad movie you love and would like to be a guest on the show, you can contact me at badmovieswelove@theshice.com or badmovieswelove spelled LUV on Twitter and Instagram. And until next time, take care, be well, stay safe, and have fun however you get your movies. I know you're out there somewhere, Rids. I love you.